WP, you are an unimportant government worker who, by mere chance, gets to perform the most interesting job of his career. Interview a time traveler. You begin by introducing yourself and the guy immediately freaks out. What makes a person happy? Is it the food? The people around them? Their totally fulfilling job? No. It's the internet. When I filled out that sketchy government application fresh out of college, I thought I'd be working in some bustling city, not stuck in a military base in the middle of nowhere, blindfolded and transported in a cargo plane. I was dropped off in the driest and hottest part of a desert of which I still don't know the name of. I couldn't even call my parents. My phone was confiscated and couldn't use Google, no computers in the base. The only amenities there were a pair of dice. There weren't even any cards. I might as well have been kidnapped if it weren't for the monthly paychecks I received and the promise to let me return home in 10 years. But today, by some crazy amount of luck, I was assigned to Project Timegate. I heard from a co-worker that the original lead disappeared. Last video recordings were of him entering a coffee shop and never exiting. One might ask that surely there would be a backup. And there was. This backup lead went to the bathroom during work one day and vanished. I still remember the goosebumps when I learned about that. Now surely, there would be a backup lead. This is the government, after all. And there was. The backup lead called in sick. By that time, there were hardly any people with enough security clearance in the base. So some high up official made me part of Project Timegate. Behind a room-sized one-way glass window, a man in a white lab coat that I didn't recognize shook my hand. I'm John. Everything is already prepared for you. I took a glance inside the room and saw a seated elderly, silver-haired man. John handed me a clipboard with a list of questions that I was supposed to ask the mysterious man inside. Just to be clear, this interview won't be dangerous, right? I asked in a questioning tone. John gave a comforting smile. Of course. No dangers at all, clearing my throat. I gave a thumbs up to John and he entered a lengthy passcode on the electronic keypad beside the metal entrance. The door unlocked with a soft click and I strode in, taking a seat and looking closer at the man. I felt that this old man looked a bit familiar. I'm Archie and I'll just be asking you a few questions today. I gave a hesitant smile to the man who now had a furrowed look on his face. I understood the reason for my sense of familiarity. His eyebrows looked a bit similar to mine. He hoarsely asked, Archie? Archie Simmons. The elderly man jumped up in surprise with a look of shock, before composing himself a second later. How do you know my full name? The elderly man ignored me, quietly muttering to himself, and I could only hear soft snippets. Possible. Rule 10 of time. Paradox. The elderly man had a sudden realization and smiled at my perplexed looking face. But he suddenly grasped my right hand, placing something hard inside and closing my hand. Have a safe journey, he croaked. I opened my right hand and looked at what was inside. A metallic token with a symbol of a door on it. My vision started getting hazy and I saw my hand slowly flaking away into little specks with the token remaining intact. In shock, I looked up at the blurry man in front of me. All I could see was his smile that looked too sad to be a smile. Purely writing. Tick tick tick, 3 o'clock. On the dot. That meant it was time for a smoke break. It was a nasty habit, but a few minutes outside away from the monotony work made all the difference in the world. It's funny. Telling people I worked for the FBI usually gave them a spark in the eye, eager to ask for what classified adventures I've been on. I've found that saying I can neither confirm nor deny anything gets a better reaction than telling them that I'm just another pencil pusher. I wasn't even supposed to be at work today. I was supposed to be on vacation with my wife and daughter. I was called into work because the office nut job, affectionately called Spooky, had not shown up to work for the 5th day in a row. When I got to the outside smoking area, there was already another man there. He was balding and had large, thin-framed round glasses. I gave him a curt nod and a brief sir before lighting my cigarette. He ignored me and took a long drag from his. When he finished, he got up and only then did he seem to notice me. He stuck out his hand and said, "Agent, I don't believe I remember your name." "It's Agent Smith. Assistant Director." "Ah. The one we needed to call in because Mother hasn't shown up to work in 5 days. Agent Smith, would you come with me please?" I put out my cigarette and followed him back inside the building. The building was large, and all the hallways and rooms looked exactly like each other. Eventually, he led me to a pair of doors. One of the doors had a translucent window, and the other did not. The assistant director turned to me and began to speak. "Inside this room is a man claiming to be from the future. Normally we might assume that this is some sort of delirium psychosis or some other form of mental disorder. But this is different. Agents were able to detect the smallest evidence of a breach into our servers. And it eventually led us to this man. He was found with the personal information of almost every agent that works for the country. I want you to determine who gave him this information, or how he was able to access it and what he plans on doing with it. The cameras are recording video and audio in the next room." I gave a nod, and he walked off in a hurry. I opened the door and saw the man sitting down, handcuffed. He was dressed in a rather simple t-shirt and jeans, an outfit which didn't scream time traveler. I shut the door behind me and walked up to the table. On it was a handcuff attachment, and on my seat was a remote. In one corner of the room, there was a small TV in the upper corner, playing 24-hour news. In the opposite corner was a recording camera, with the light on. I didn't know which one the remote was for. I pulled out my chair and sat down. "You know, for a time traveler, your clothes seem to be rather out of date." The man smiled and looked around the room. "There aren't many times to dress like this when I'm from. Largely thanks to the behaviors of your people. In these next couple of decades, the temperature never drops below 75. Even in what was once winter. The air is so heavily polluted that you experience lung damage if you are outside for more than 3 hours without a gas mask. It makes this time period look like Eden." I pulled out my notebook and pen but didn't write anything in it. "And is that why you're here? Some vacation through time?" I held my pen to the page and waited for his response. "Not exactly. I'm here for much more serious matters." He sat up, with a more stern look on his face. I'm usually able to tell when people are lying, and it seemed like he wasn't. "Of course. Just because you believe what you're saying doesn't necessarily mean it's true. As far as I could tell, he really believed all this." I continued. "And what are these matters?" I keep my pen in my hand, hoping he'll give me useful information this time. He pulls up the sleeve on his t-shirt, revealing a barcode and serial number tattooed on his shoulder. "Perhaps this will help explain it. People are little more than livestock when I'm from. People live their entire lives as property of whatever company their parents were owned by, and any children they have are signed over to the company that owns them. I'm part of a resistance movement, and I was sent here in order to complete an important mission." I write down barcode tattoo in my notebook. With an identifier like that in his name, we could soon track down who this man was. And what exactly does that have to do with the personal information of every FBI agent in the country? Trying to establish some sort of motive. I decided to press forwards. The man pulled himself closer to the table. "More than you would think. One of the greatest threats to the resistance in the future is known to be an FBI agent in this time period. He works as a mercenary for the corporations, torturing and interrogating the members of the resistance. They say that he starts his interrogations by extinguishing his cigar on his victims, in order to humor him." I said, "That all sounds very serious. Tell me. I don't think I got your name." I had no time to entertain his delusion, but I didn't want to scare him off from talking to me either. He looked at me with a somewhat expressionless face, giving away very little. In my time with the resistance, I've learned to not give away my name to someone who hasn't shared theirs. If it was what he needed to keep talking, I was fine with giving him my name. I stuck my hand out. "It's Ulysses Smith." The man's face seemed to drop the moment he heard my name. He started muttering, "No. No. That's not possible. You were supposed to be on vacation with your wife and daughter today. You had today off months in advance. This isn't possible. You shouldn't be here." This was odd. He was right, of course. But why would he know that? I was basically an office worker. Someone who processed paperwork and made photocopies. Why would he have known not only my work schedule but the fact that I planned on vacation with my wife and daughter? The confirmed deceased just updated to include a Julia and Jessica Smith. A vacationing mother and daughter. The news report on the television in the corner had updated to a breaking news story. One about a terrorist attack at the hotel that my wife and daughter were staying at. I looked back at the man, and he was slouched, staring at the table and muttering, "I failed. I failed. It's not possible. He shouldn't be here." I picked him up by his shirt violently. "What did you do?" He continued to stare down despondently. I planted a bomb in your luggage. I was only supposed to kill you. I swear." I threw the man down. He killed my wife and daughter. They had taken my luggage with them, hoping that I would be able to show up later. They had hoped that I would have been able to spend time with them. But instead, their last moments were spent with luggage that they didn't even need to bring with them. Their deaths had been entirely pointless. I sat down, trying to collect my thoughts. It would be a while before anyone noticed that I was in here with him. Perhaps I could still get useful information out of him. But there was one thing I had to do first. The news kept updating the story with the names of the deceased, and I knew that I could not bear to hear their names on repeat. I grabbed the remote and aimed it at the TV. But it didn't go off no matter what button I pushed. No. I knew what it was for. I turned and aimed it at the camera. And sure enough, the light on the camera switched off. I pulled out my pack of cigarettes and a lighter. I lit one and tried to take a long drag to settle my nerves. To no effect. It seemed that one cigarette just wasn't enough of a nicotine buzz for me. I got up and walked around to the man. I took my lit cigarette and, with a satisfying hiss, proceeded to put it out on his forehead. "Now, tell me more about this resistance of yours."